Hello! It's really nice to take some time out again and to share some thoughts with you about parenting during this Covid-19 lockdown period. And I thought it's a really good time to open up a little bit and share with you, especially now restrictions have changed slightly and invitations have gone out for children to return to nursery settings and to schools. So I really wanted to share with you just, I suppose, what I've been going through this last week in making some of those decisions. And I really hope this becomes an encouragement to you in how I speak about things and the way I go through things. And maybe it might prompt a few thoughts that you've had yourself or provoke a few more that are, just been niggling away at you. So restrictions have changed slightly and lockdown has been slightly loosened, and I really felt that this week it was a real kind of heart decision. You know, things have schools have sent out invitations for children to attend. We can perhaps go out more than once a day to exercise or to go on walks. We can drive to locations to go on walks. We could go shopping for more non-essential items if needed. And I really found God challenging my heart decision on this week and saying, Gem, is this, what are you in this for? Are you in this to run a marathon? Are you in this to run half a marathon? Are you in this more of a 1,500 meter race? Like, what are you preparing for? What is your distance? And I really believe this is going to be so different for everybody in this season. I don't believe we're all called to run perhaps a longer race with our children. I believe it will be very different for all of you. So I really ask that you hear my heart in this. I suppose there is absolutely no comparison between each other at this time. Some things God will ask some families to do, some things God won't ask you to do. It really is, what season has God called you into and your family into right now? Okay, so for me, I believe God has asked me to kind of run at a consistent pace, dig deep, and to run a marathon. So for you, just a recap, I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So this week I've received invitations for my 5-year-old to return to EYF FS Foundation Year at school, and I've received an invitation for my 3-year-old to begin a nursery setting. He was due to start at Easter, and that obviously hasn't happened, so he's now been invited to join his nursery setting. I've declined both of these invitations, which I'm very peaceful about now. I think it's a really, really big decision for all of us in family units as to what God is asking you to do as a family and as a parent. And I believe it is very different for all of you. So I have declined the invitations, and I want to go into those reasonings really as to why I've done that, whether you are finding this a big decision in your life or whether you're not as a parent. But for me, my decisions aren't really based off science or medical facts. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me it's, I really don't want my child to have a negative or an insecure experience of school. My children love school and they love what they're used to, and I don't want them to return to something that is not going to be normal to them, which it won't be. Restrictions and precautions will have to be put into place. I'm unsure what they are yet. Our school are releasing them by the end of next week, so we'll find out. But even for my boy to begin nursery, I want him to love it and to be a child there. And so I think, I don't want my children to have a negative experience. And I trust that the staff at the school my children go to would do an amazing job. They've been so supportive in this period of lockdown. They have sent so much work and ideas our way, and they've communicated fabulously with my children constantly, remarking on their work and just encouraging them and reading them stories online and telling them, how brilliant they're being. So, I believe the teachers will do a fab thing, but some of the restrictions they'll have to put in place will almost be against what they can do. So, I think that's my main thing. And also, we've got into a rhythm in our household. And I think to send 1 or 2 of my children out for 6 weeks to school and then bring them back to a summer holiday, which will be very different to what they're used to, and perhaps still won't be able to see their friends and socialise at play parks and go out on big days out. I think I'd prefer to try and keep the routine going and not break it, and then have them back for a summer holiday where actually we are limited and restricted on what we can do. So for me, I want to keep them together. And I really believe God hasn't finished with what he's doing with my family yet. I really believe that he has so much to teach me in this time, and he has so much to teach me and my family together in this time. And we're not ready to break it yet as a family unit. We want to keep going and we want to push harder. But that has been the challenge. Gem, will you dig deep and push harder? It's been a long time now, hasn't it? And when I think of I could have to keep going till September, that's quite a daunting thought, especially on days where everyone's quite emotional and it doesn't work so well. But I've got to keep running, and I've got to be consistent, and I've got to keep going, and I've got to keep pushing into God harder and more than I have been still. God's saying keep going. And I want to encourage you today. God is in it all. One of the things God has been teaching me, and I think I touched on this on the last video and I didn't reveal too much, but is being in control. I love to be in control. This is not a good thing. And this is something that God has been teaching me to step back from my children. When I give them tasks, when I give them activities, when I allow them to bake with me in the kitchen, I think that's the hardest one, to actually step back and let them bake. And it's been a challenge, but it's been working. The last, a few weeks ago, I gave my eldest an offer. Well, I gave them all an offer to help me bake scones. And the eldest one piped up and said, yes, please. Thankfully, the other 2 didn't at this point. And I said, right, here are all your utensils that you'll need. Here are all your ingredients. And here is the recipe. And I actually put the kettle on. And I think she was quite surprised that I just put the kettle on, made a cup of tea, sat down. I stayed in the room with her and I just talked to her about anything and everything, and I allowed her to ask me questions about the process and the baking, but I actually didn't touch them. I'm very good at, especially we like to bake scones in our house, but the children will rub in the flour to the butter and then they'll say I'm done and they'll run to wash their hands, and I will just get in there and rub in the flour and the butter to make sure it's really, rubbed in properly. They'll cut the scones out and they'll put them onto the baking tray. I will be reshaping them on the baking tray before I put them in the oven. And God really challenged me and said, no, this is for them to do. And I have to allow them to not do it perfectly. I have to step back and allow them to just do it how they will do it and be okay with that, and champion them for the success that they've done. Like my little girl's face when she actually made scones and we ate them and they were completely lovely and completely edible. She was really chuffed with herself. She was so proud of herself, and I was proud of her for keeping going and for doing it. And it was hard to sit on my hands and not interfere. But I tell you one thing, it was relaxing and less exhausting than running around trying to actually perfect what they were doing. It was lovely. I actually drank a hot cup of tea. So that's one thing that God's really been challenging me on over these last 9-10 weeks, and he's not done with that yet. There are still times where I interfere. There are still times where I want to perfect what my children are doing. And that's not for me to do. It's for me to sit back and just encourage them and celebrate what they achieve and what they do, because it is all good enough, and it is all plenty good enough for our Father God. And I need to fall into that as well. So I really hope this is encouraging you, and I really hope that your heart can just be at peace about new decisions and new ways that you guys might be finding as a family as restrictions are being lifted slightly. I know it's still quite heavy, but there are different things that we could do, but it's whether we choose to do that or whether we don't choose to do that. And I believe God is really in this and helping you, and that's something you need to go to him and to ask. But if you choose to if you like keep going, you might be exhausted, you might be out of breath on your marathon. But if you choose, if this is something you've struggled with and you choose to suck it up and to just keep running, God is in that. God is in that mess. Even if you finish at the end of the day and there is just mess and chaos around you, God will still come. God is still there. He's not going to abandon you because you're too exhausted to do something. He will grace you sufficiently, and he will help you sufficiently if a marathon is the race you choose. If God has brought you just into a half marathon or into a 1500 meter sprint, then your normal may change, and it may be changing now, and that's okay too, because God has a different season for you. And I think as a parent, we can easily fall into feeling pressured to do something or feel pressured to not do something. And I think that is where we need to not worry and just be at peace with what God is asking you to do as a parent in your family, because that's all that matters right now, is where God has you at personally and your family at. So if you are returning to work, obviously stay safe, but I really hope that your child resettles well into school, or your child just can adapt to a new normal. And I really hope God will encourage you in that and just bring you through it with a new thankfulness, a new normal, and a new unity within your family. So I really hope this has encouraged you today. There's one kind of film reference that's going through my head actually as I explain this and share some thoughts with you. And I will admit I like to watch Friends. I am a fan of that. And there was one episode where Phoebe, she takes care of her brother's triplets, and she's never had them before. She doesn't have children, and she takes care of them in Monica's house. And she asks for Monica and Chandler's help while she's doing this. Anyway, throughout the episode, Chandler has to go to hospital. Monica takes him to hospital, and Phoebe is petrified of looking after these triplets by herself. And Monica returns home, and her apartment is completely it looks like a tornado has swept through it. It is just chaos everywhere. Curtains falling down, like mess absolutely everywhere. And Phoebe is sitting down, drinking a cup of tea, going, "Yay, I took care of the babies all by myself. Like, I'm so happy. I'm so proud of myself. This was a huge achievement." And Monica is ready to just fight with her and shout at her for the mess. And actually Chandler sweeps in and he says, "There may be mess, but this is the place where Phoebe has had her accomplishment. She's achieved something. Let's celebrate her." And actually, that's what God is like with us, especially in this time of lockdown. Like, he doesn't care about the mess and the material things. He wants to celebrate your achievements in the fact that you are running a hard race and you have not given up. So persevere, guys. Dig deep, parents. Lean into God and rest on him. Bye.